Okay, Unit 8.1 test. So the first things first, it says what words represent answers to quadratic equations. We can call them solutions, x-intercepts, roots, and or zeros. Okay, now we need to simplify these radicals. So knowing that, looking at number 1, first things first, I have negative inside, so I'm going to make it positive and put an I, and I'm going to break down 28. So I know 2 goes into 28, 14, 2, and 7. So I have a pair of 2's, so 2 comes out. I also have an I out, and then leftovers is 7. Number 2, again, I have a negative on the inside, so I'm going to put an I. Remember, it goes between your number and your radical. So I have 3i, and I'm going to multiply it by whatever I take out. So 72 is 2 and 36. Well, 36 is a perfect square. If you didn't notice that, that's okay. But I know it's 6 and 6. And remember, if they match, we can stop. So I'm going to take out a 6, and I have a 2 left over. So 3i times 6 is 18i square root of 2. Now, this one has the negative on the outside. That's okay. This is not imaginary. It's just telling me that I'm going to put a negative in front of whatever I take out. So 5 goes into 125 25 times. And then 25 is a perfect square of 5 and 5. So I have a 5 I get to take out, and a 5 I get to put back inside. Here I have a 7 already there. I'm going to set it up as multiplication because there's no plus or minus here. 108. 2 goes into that. 54 times, 2 goes into that, 27 times, 3 and 9, 3 and 3, so I have 2 and 3's, so I take out 2 times 3 is 6, and I have a 3 left over. Well, 7 times 6 is 42, and the 3 in the house. So there is my simplifying radicals. Okay, next says solve the following using the zero factor property. So remember, zero factor property meant if you multiply anything times 0, it equals 0. So one or both have to equal 0 for this to equal 0. So I set them equal to 0 to figure out when it will equal 0. So here I'm going to add 1, and I get x equals 1, minus 3, x equals negative 3. So here my solution is negative 3 comma 1. Remember, we write them in least to greatest. Here, 3x plus 2 equals 0, x plus 6 equals 0, so minus 2, 3x equals, that gives me negative 2. Divide by 3, and I get negative 2/3. Minus 6, x equals negative 6. Smallest is negative 6, and then negative 2/3. Okay, solve by square root property. So remember, you have to get what's squared alone. So here, what's squared is already alone. So x squared is squared. Here I have 2x minus 3 squared, and here I have x squared. So we have to get that alone. So here's already alone, so we're going to go ahead and square root both sides. Square root cancels the squared, and I get x equals, well, I took the square root of a number, so it's going to be a positive and a negative. And 144 is a perfect square of 12. If you didn't notice that, you could have broken it down like we did number 1 through 4, and you would have gotten the same thing. So negative 12, positive 12. Here, my what's squared is not alone, so I have to divide both sides by 4, and I get 2x minus 3 squared equals negative 8. So now that I have what's squared alone, I have to square root both sides. So I'm going to square root cancels the square, and I'm left with 2x minus 3 equals positive and negative. I'm going to give the I and break down 8. So 2 and 4, 2 and 2. So I'm going to take out a 2. Don't forget your I with a 2 left over. And now I have to solve for x because I don't have x by itself yet, so this isn't my answer. So I'm going to add 3 to both sides. Get 2x equals 3 plus or minus 2i root 2. divide by 2, divide by 2. I'm dividing every single term by 2. This cancels, that does not cancel. Now, inside the house cannot cancel, only outside. So my answer is 3 over 2 plus or minus I root 2. But I have to write it twice. So I have 3 over 2 minus I root 2, 3 over 2 plus I root 2. Okay, let's look at number 9. Same thing, we have to get what's squared alone, so I'm going to add 18 to both sides. I get x squared equals 18. So now what's squared is alone, I'm going to square root both sides. Square root cancels the squared, and I get x equals positive and negative 2 and 9, 3 and 3. So I get to take a 3 out with a 2 left over. So negative 3 root 2, positive 3 root 2. And pay attention, I'm using fancy brackets and I'm listing my answer. So now let's look at the back. So I'm still solving by square root property. Okay, so again, get what's squared alone. Here I have this, it's squared and it's alone, so I'm going to square root both sides. Square root cancels the squared. I'm left with 2x minus 3 equals, let's break down 162. I know 2 goes into 162. I'm dividing it. I don't know this one by heart. 81 times. And 81 is a perfect square of 9 and 9. Remember, I can stop if it's a perfect square. So this gives me positive and negative 9 root 2. I'm going to add 3 to both sides. 2x equals 3 plus or minus 9 root 2. Divide by 2, divide by 2, divide by 2. Nothing simplifies, so I can rewrite this as a single fraction, like this, or keep it separate. It doesn't matter. So I have 3 over 2 minus 9 root 2 over 2, 3 over 2 plus 9 root 2 over 2. Okay, looking at number 11, what's squared is not alone. So I'm going to add 3 to both sides. This one's a weird one. I get 9x squared equals negative 149. Divide both sides by 9 to get what's squared alone. And I get x squared equals negative 149 over 9. That does not simplify. You can check in your calculator. I know I didn't type the negative, but it's okay. It stays the same. Okay? So I have to square root both sides. Well, I know when I have a fraction, I can square root the top and the bottom separate. Well, the square root of 9 is 3. And then the square root of this, it doesn't simplify. So you have to take out the I and you get 149. So I have x equals positive and negative I square root of 149 over 3, which does not simplify. So negative I square root of 149 over 3, positive I square root of 149 over 3. Okay, number 12, what is squared is already alone. So I'm going to go ahead and square root both sides. Square root cancels the squared. I'm left with 5x plus 1 equals positive and negative. Well, I have to break down the 20. So 2 and 10, 2 and 5. So I'm going to have a 2. Root 5 is my leftover. I'm going to subtract 1 from both sides. And I get 5x equals negative 1 plus or minus 2 root 5. And then I'm going to divide by 5. And again, just like before, this one, even if I rewrite it like this, does not simplify. So my final answer can be a single fraction. Negative 1 minus 2 root 5 over 5. And negative 1 plus 2 square root of 5 over 5. If you write it separate, that is totally fine as well. So if you write it like this, that's perfect. If you write it like this, that's perfect. Either way. As long as if it was possible to simplify, you did. Now we're going to solve by factoring. I want you to notice right here, first off, I have to get it equal to 0. This is my a term, my c term, my b term. So I'm going to add 2x to both sides. and I get x squared plus 2x minus 15. And because a is 1, I can do it in the calculator. I'm going to hit graph, and I see that it touches my x-axis twice. One's positive, one's negative. Or one's negative, one's positive, sorry. And so I need to find a negative solution at -5 and a positive at 3. So my answer is -5, 3. Remember, we write these least to greatest inside fancy brackets. So same concept. X squared plus 5x minus 14, second graph, or hit graph, touches twice, one's positive, one's negative, so at -7 and positive 2. Okay, look at number 15. This time a is not 1, so I cannot do it in the calculator. So I know there is no GCF. A is 5, so 5x, b is -17, and 5 times 6, a times c is 30. So what multiplies to give me positive 30 and adds to give me -17? Remember, you can use your calculator trick, top number divide x, top number divide x plus x, and you're looking for your bottom number. So right there, it's -15, -2. Well, 5 over 2 doesn't simplify, but 5 over 15 does. Remember, don't type your negative. And I get 1 over 3, bring over your negative, bring over your x. So I get x minus 3, 5x minus 2 equals 0. And now I separate and solve. So x minus 3 equals 0, 5x minus 2 equals 0. And I get 2/5. So 2/5, 3. Okay, look at number 16. Now on number 16, I want you to realize that I don't want a negative a by moving that over. So I'm going to move the c and the b. So I get 7x squared. I'm going to add 46x to both sides. And add 24 to both sides. So those both became positive instead. Now you can see if you have a GCF by dividing 46 divided by 7. It doesn't, so 7's prime, so there's nothing else. So there's no GCF here, therefore we're going to snowflake. 7x, 7x, b is 46, 7 times 24 is 168. And then if you do this in your calculator, you end up getting 42 and 4. Both positive. So this does not simplify, but this one does. I get 1 over 6. So we set them both equal to 0 and solve. Okay, look at number 17. I'm going to do minus 12x. Now I have a GCF of x. However, 7 is prime, 7 does not go into 12, so I don't have a number, just a letter. So when I take that out, I'm left with 12x squared plus 7x minus 12. Now remember, this means that we could have 3 answers because it's cubed. So I have x, and I know that's going to be a factor, and I have to set it equal to 0. However, to find my other 2 factors, I have to type snowflake this. that gives me negative 144. When you do this in your calculator, you end up getting 16 and negative 9. Both of these simplify. So this simplifies to 4x over 3, negative 3. And this simplifies to 3 over 4, and this is positive. So 3x plus 4 equals 0. And then 4x minus 3 equals 0. So that gives me negative 4/3, don't forget the 0, and positive 3/4. Here, the first factor is already as factors as it can get. Now this is a perfect square minus perfect square, difference of squares. I know x times x is x squared, and 7 times 7 is 49. So there's that first factor, and then I get x minus 7, x plus 7. So add 7 to both sides, and I get x equals 7. Okay, so I get negative 7, negative 2, positive 7. So there's that answer. Yeah. So the next one is number 19. These are the two that I messed up. My bad, y'all. This is going to be 81x squared, or x cubed, sorry. And this should be 4x cubed equals 49x. Sorry about that, y'all. So now there is no GCF number, but x goes into both of these. So when I take that out, I get 81x squared minus 16. And this is a perfect square minus a perfect square, because 9x, 9x, and then 4 and 4. So I get x, 9x minus 4, 9x plus 4. And I set all of them equal to 0. So x equals 0. So add 4, add 4. Subtract 4. So I get negative 4 over 9, 0, positive 4 over 9. Okay, last but not least, I need to get equal to 0, so I get 4x cubed minus 49x. And I have a GCF of x. So when I take that out, I have this. Well, this is a perfect square minus a perfect square. And I get this. So set all my factors equal to 0 and solve. I'm trying to cut corners because I'm running out of space. And there it is. Okay, if I went too fast, feel free to slow it down. But this is your review. Good luck on your test.